Hello dear students, this is Dr. Adwet and welcome to lecture number 9 of Chemical Coordination and Integration. Now, before we start with today's lecture, there are a few things that I would like to discuss with you. Number 1, if you understand everything that we discuss in today's lecture, please consider clicking the like button given below. It lets me know that you've understood everything and that you have enjoyed today's lecture. If you would like more information and more such videos about standard 11th and 12th NCERT biology, please consider subscribing to our channel, Dr. Adwet's NEET Biology. At the same time, please click the bell icon next to it, which will inform you about all my future uploads. If you have any questions related to biology, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section given below. I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Also, each and every lecture is associated with a small multiple choice question assignment. Please solve it immediately after seeing the lecture. It will help you to consolidate your knowledge about today's session. And lastly, if you enjoyed today's session and you derived value from it, please consider sharing it with all your friends who you believe may also benefit from this lecture series. So, with all of this out of the way, let's start today's lecture. As always, let's quickly have a recap of what we have done in the lectures before this. So, in lecture number 1, we started talking about what is a gland, what are enzymes, what are endocrine glands, what are exocrine glands, what are heterocrine glands like pancreas, what are hormones, and we saw what were the properties of hormones. In lecture number 2, we started talking about the pituitary gland, and we saw its position, its external structure, its embryology and its parts. Also, we discussed the blood supply of the pituitary. In lecture number 3, we continued talking about the histology of the anterior pituitary, and in lecture number 4, we finished off histology of the posterior pituitary. In lecture number 5, we started talking about hormones in detail, and in lecture number 6, we completed growth hormone, prolactin and thyroid stimulating hormone. Whilst doing this, we had also finished off the hypothalamus, which is a separate endocrine gland in itself, and it is the real actual master endocrine gland in the body. In lecture number 7, we continued with adrenocorticotrophic hormone and we did little bits of gonadotrophic hormone, and while we were doing this, we also finished the entire adrenal gland. So as of today, we have finished off the hypothalamus, we have finished off the entire adrenal gland, but we are yet to finish the pituitary gland, which I am hoping that we will complete today. Okay. In the last lecture, which was lecture number 8, we did a hormone called as antidiuretic hormone or ADH. So as far as the pituitary gland is concerned, we are only to finish one more hormone, which is oxytocin, and that will complete our entire understanding of the pituitary gland. So with all of this out of the way, today's lecture starts now. All right. So as far as hormones of the pituitary gland are concerned, we have finished off growth hormone, prolactin, thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotrophic hormone, gonadotrophic hormone, and all these hormones were belonging to the anterior pituitary. They were secreted by the acidophils and the basophils of the anterior pituitary. As far as the posterior pituitary is concerned, it does not. So as far as the anterior pituitary is concerned, all the hormones are done. As far as the posterior pituitary is concerned, it does not produce any of its own hormones. The hormones are produced or secreted by the neurosecretory cells of the hypothalamus. However, it stores them in the axon terminals and then releases into blood. So we have finished off with ADH or antidiuretic hormone. So as you can see from the chart given here next to me, we have finished everything about pituitary except oxytocin, and that is what I aim to finish today. Okay, so as far as all hormones are concerned, we have been discussing their nature, their releasing cells, their regulating cells, their functions and their disorders. So it is no different for oxytocin. We will also be discussing the same for oxytocin as well. As far as oxytocin is concerned, it can also be prepared artificially in the laboratory and the artificial version which you can actually buy from a medical store or which is available to doctors is called Pitocin. So oxytocin and pitocin are the same thing. One is produced in the body normally, naturally, which is going to be called as oxytocin, whereas the other one is the one which is going to be available or prepared artificially and you can buy it, which is called as Pitocin. At the end of today's lecture, I will explain to you why Pitocin is available in the medical stores and why doctors use it. So oxytocin or Pitocin is a polypeptide hormone by nature. The releasing cells are going to be the paraventricular nucleus, which is in the hypothalamus, and it is stored and released from the pars nervosa of the posterior pituitary. At the same time, the release is regulated by nerve impulses which are generated in the hypothalamus. So all of these things you already know from the previous lectures. So that brings us to what are the functions of oxytocin. So before we continue to discuss the functions of oxytocin, we need to understand a topic from standard 12th NCERT. So this current chapter that we are discussing, chemical coordination and integration, is the last chapter in standard 11th NCERT, the 22nd chapter in NCERT, which is chemical coordination and integration in the 11th standard textbook. So now I am going to discuss a part from standard 12th NCERT, unit 6 and chapter 3, which is human reproduction. So I'm going to do a small topic from human reproduction right now, and that is the human breast. So what do you need to know about the human breast? So as far as a human female is concerned, just like the human male, it is going to have a chest or a breastbone which is called as the sternum. On the side of the sternum, just like a human male, she is going to have the rib cage, and on top of the rib cage are going to be the chest or the breast muscles. Now these muscles are called as the pectoral muscles, and there are two pairs. There is a bigger one on each side and a smaller one on each side. The bigger one is called pectoralis major, which you can see in the diagram given here. So these muscles which you see here, are the pectoral muscles, and the bigger ones here which are seen in this diagram are called pectoralis major. Now this, of course, here in the center is the sternum. What you see here in the center is the sternum, and of course below the pectoral muscles you are going to have the rib cage. Now in the case of a female, what you see here, these structures which you see here are the human breast, which are also called as the mammary glands, and they are going to be producing the milk. So the NCERT says that a functional mammary gland which produces milk is the characteristic of all mammalian females, and the mammary glands are paired structure breasts that contain glandular tissue. Why glandular tissue? Because they will secrete something. What do mammary glands secrete? Milk. So they are exocrine glands, and of course they contain variable amount of fat. If we were to see this from a different angle, this is how the mammary glands would appear to be. So here from a different angle you can see that the mammary gland has all these lobes which are going to secrete milk, and you can see that there are these various tubules which you can see in the diagram here, and all of these tubules are converging at this single point which is called as the nipple. And as you all know, the baby will latch on to the nipple to drink the milk which is coming out from it. So I hope that this side view is now clear to you, and here, like I said, you have the nipple from which the milk will be released into the baby's mouth. So let's have a closer look at the human breast. So here is a cut section of the mammary gland, and as you can see here in the center, that part is called as the nipple. The area surrounding the nipple is slightly darker as compared to the normal skin, and that slightly darker area around the nipple is called as the areola. Of course, you can also see the parts here in yellow, which may be more or less depending on the woman, and that is why the NCERT says that there is a variable amount of fat in the human breast. Okay. At the same time, you can also see that these structures here, these structures which you can see here, these structures. Now these are the compartments or the lobes which are simply called as the mammary lobes, which are found inside the breast. There can be anywhere from 15 to 20 mammary lobes inside each breast. And if I was to magnify one of them, one of these mammary lobes, if I was to magnify one of these mammary lobes, this is how it would appear to be. So what you see there in the black circle is a mammary lobe, and within that mammary lobe, inside that mammary lobe, have a look at this part which has now been highlighted or which is visible to you, this part, and that part is going to be called as the alveolus. Alveolus is Latin for sac, thela. So you can see that there is a sac-like structure within the mammary lobe which is called as the alveolus. Again, you can see in that diagram that there isn't just one alveolus, there are many alveoli which are found inside each lobe. So let's have a look at this in detail, and let me magnify this for you. Let me magnify it for you. So here you can see a magnified image of a lobe showing one big alveoli. Remember that there are many such alveoli. Okay, so if you were to look at this structure, it's an alveolus, and the bluish purplish cells that you see there are going to be the alveolar cells. Within this alveolus, you will have this structure in the center, or this empty space in the center, which will be called as the lumen. Now, these are the cells of the alveolus which are going to be called as the alveolar cells, and they will secrete the milk. Of course, that milk will get collected in the cavity which will be called as the lumen. So here you can see an alveolus comprising of alveolar cells. The alveolar cells will secrete milk, and that milk gets collected in the lumen. This, as you all know, is under the control of a hormone which is going to be called as prolactin. So we have done this a few lectures back. Prolactin is responsible for secretion of milk. So the secretion is going to be done by prolactin. Now, whatever milk is collected in the lumen gets pushed into this tube which you see here, into this tube which you can see here. So this tube arising from the alveolus will be called as the mammary tubule. And as you can see here, the mammary tubule from various alveoli, not just this one. So here you have one alveolus, here you have another one, here you have another one. So this is the mammary tubule from the particular alveoli that we are seeing or we are studying. But there is one more mammary tubule here, there is one more mammary tubule here. So since there are many alveoli, there are going to be many such mammary tubules found in each lobe. And now you can see that all these mammary tubules are collecting in this big tube, here. So notice how this tube, all are emptying the milk into this big tube here, and that is called as the mammary duct. So now, dear students, it should be clear to you that all the alveoli of a lobe are going to open into their respective mammary tubules, and all these mammary tubules will connect together to form a mammary duct. So there will only be one mammary duct per mammary lobe. Only one mammary duct per mammary lobe. So there is one per lobe. Okay. So now let's see what happens to these tubes which are going to be called as the mammary ducts. So here you can see that these arrows are pointing to the mammary ducts. So several mammary ducts from the different lobes will come and will join to form a dilated part which you can see here, Now that dilated part is called as an ampulla. Remember children, any dilated part of a tube is called as an ampulla. So if you have any tube, and if this tube has a wide part, so for example, idhar tak thin, and then it suddenly becomes slightly broader. The broader part of this tube is called as an ampulla. So here, where this arrow is pointing, you can clearly see that the tubes are joining together and are being slightly dilated. So that part is going to be called as the mammary ampulla. So you have the wider mammary ampulla. So the mammary ducts join together to form the wider mammary ampulla. Now these mammary ampullae are going to join to form these pipes. So from the ampullae, you have these little pipes which are opening on the surface of the nipple, and they are called as lactiferous ducts. They are called as lactiferous ducts, and they open onto the nipple. They open onto the nipple, and of course from the nipple, the milk that they are carrying will open into the baby's mouth. So this is what is going to happen. So as you can see here, there's a baby who is suckling on the mother's breast, and all these mammary ducts are converging towards the nipple, and finally when the baby will take the nipple in its mouth, the milk will enter into the baby's mouth. So if we were to summarize this as per NCERT, you are going to have 15 to 20 mammary lobes per breast. These ones which we saw before in the magnified section. Each one of them has a cluster of cells called as the alveoli. So a singular one is called alveolus, many of them together are called alveoli. These alveoli then secrete their milk into the lumen, and from the lumen they are transferred into the mammary tubules. From the mammary tubules, many such mammary tubules from many alveoli in a given mammary lobe will open into a single mammary duct for each lobe. So all mammary tubules from a given lobe open into a mammary duct. So if a question is asked to you, how many mammary ducts are found in each breast? The answer is jitne mammary lobes, utne mammary ducts. So 15 to 20 mammary lobes, then 15 to 20 mammary ducts. All these mammary ducts converge towards the nipple, where a few of them, 2-3 of them will combine and form a wider tube, which is going to be called as the mammary ampulla. So several mammary ducts from different lobes open into a wider mammary ampulla, and the mammary ampullae will open into lactiferous ducts, and these lactiferous ducts open to the nipple. So this is the sequence from where milk is produced and the pathway which it takes to reach the baby's mouth via the nipple. So please take a screenshot of this image, and you can draw it and you can paste it in the NCERT in the chapter of reproduction, so that you can easily remember the pathway that the milk is going to take. The NCERT shows this diagram. So if you notice this diagram here, this diagram is from the NCERT explaining to you the entire structure of the breast, which I just completed. So here also please have a look that the NCERT mentions that there is a rib cage. The NCERT mentions that there are muscles in between the rib cage. The NCERT mentions that there is a pectoralis major muscle, and then the NCERT mentions everything about the breast which we just discussed. So please keep it in mind that there is a rib cage, and in front of the rib cage there is the pectoralis major muscle, and in front of that you are going to have the human breast. So this is everything that you need to know about the human breast, which is not from this chapter of chemical coordination, it is from the chapter of human reproduction. So now, dear students, the question is why? Why am I doing parts of different chapters while we are doing chemical coordination? And the reason why I explained this anatomy of the breast in detail to you right now is, have a look at this diagram once again. Please understand that in this diagram, the baby is not sucking the milk from the breast. Sucking is what you will do if you want to drink water or Diet Coke or Pepsi from a glass with a straw. So you can suck something from a glass with the help of a straw. That is not what is happening in this diagram. So we don't say that a baby is sucking milk from the breast. We say that the baby is suckling. The baby is suckling. So if the baby is not sucking the milk, then the question is, how is the milk going in this direction from the lower lobes into the baby's mouth? How is that happening? How is this happening? And the answer to that, how is this happening, is that the milk has to be pushed. The milk is being pushed. So somehow from within the alveoli, those sacs, The milk is being pushed into the lumen, and from the lumen it is being pushed into the mammary tubules. From the mammary tubules it is being pushed into the mammary duct, into the ampullae, and into the lactiferous duct. So the milk is literally being pushed, and that is how the milk from the lower part is going into the baby's mouth. So how is that happening? So we once again come to this picture which we have seen before, and now I want you to focus on the pinkish cell which is on the alveolus. The alveolar cells are the ones which are in blue or purple in color. Have a look at the one which is now pinkish in color with these processes or projections. This one. Have a look at this cell. Now this particular cell which you are seeing right now is called as the myoepithelial cell. Now it is called as epithelial because you can see that it is lining the alveolar cells, and it is called myoepithelial because it is capable of contraction just like muscles. So the pinkish cell which is surrounding the alveolus is capable of contraction, So if this pinkish cell can contract, then the alveolus will squeeze, and if the alveolus squeezes, whatever is within the lumen will get pushed. So the myoepithelial cells surround the alveoli and are capable of contraction, and if they contract, whatever is in the lumen will be pushed, and that, dear students, is how milk is pushed out from the breast. That is called milk ejection, and that is done by a hormone which is going to be called as oxytocin. A hormone called as oxytocin. So please take a screenshot of this image because I want you to clearly remember this. Okay, who or which is the hormone responsible for the breast to make milk? कौन सा हार्मोन है जिसकी वजह से ब्रेस्ट मिल्क बनाएगा? The answer is prolactin. Prolactin is responsible for production of milk. Prolactin is responsible for milk secretion. However, prolactin will only make the milk in the breast. How is the milk which is already produced and secreted in the breast pushed out? How does milk ejection take place? That is because of contraction of myoepithelial cells which are under the control of oxytocin. So please remember this: milk secretion is prolactin, milk ejection is oxytocin. Clear? So please take a screenshot of this, and this will help you to remember that what is the difference between prolactin and oxytocin. Okay, moving on. So oxytocin is a hormone which basically does just one thing, and that one thing is it will tell a few things to do contraction. So one of the things that it will ask to contract is going to be the smooth muscles or the myoepithelial cells of the breast, and that will push the milk out, which will cause milk ejection, and hence it is also called as milk ejection hormone. So this is one thing that oxytocin causes contraction of. So what is the other thing that oxytocin can cause contraction of? The other thing is going to be smooth muscles of the uterus. So now what is the uterus? So have a look at the diagram which is now going to appear on your screen. This is a pregnant woman with a baby inside her body. The organ inside which the baby is present, the pinkish organ, this organ inside which the baby is present, this organ is called as the uterus. You may know it in common English as the womb, the organ inside which the baby grows. So medically we say it is the uterus. So in the uterus you can already see that there is this baby growing inside her, and when the baby is fully grown, the baby will be pushed out, and you already know that the process of this pushing out or giving birth is called as partum or parturition. We have done this when we were doing prolactin. So the baby is going to come out from this canal here, which is going to be called as the vagina. So this big organ is called as the uterus, inside which you have the baby, and this is going to be called as the vagina. So let's see how childbirth now is actually going to occur. So if I was to just ask this mother to lie down, this is how she is going to be lying down, And now during the process of delivery or parturition or childbirth, the uterine muscles, the muscles of the uterus, the muscles of that organ will contract so that the baby is going to be pushed out. So have a look at this little video animation which shows this to you. So notice how the orange pinkish colored uterus is contracting. Notice how it is contracting and see how the baby is being pushed out. Please understand, बेबी बाहर आ रहा है इसीलिए यूट्रस छोटा नहीं हो रहा है. यूट्रस कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करके छोटा हो रहा है इसलिए बेबी को बाहर धक्का लग रहा है. So which is the hormone which is going to tell this uterine muscles to contract? Oxytocin. So oxytocin will cause the smooth muscles of the uterus to contract, which pushes the baby out, which will result in childbirth, and hence oxytocin can also be called as the birth hormone. So oxytocin, natural oxytocin produced in the body, has three names. You can call it as oxytocin, you can call it as milk ejection hormone, or you can call it as the birth hormone. So this, dear students, is the function of oxytocin. So I hope that this now functions of oxytocin are absolutely clear to you. Now, the disorders of oxytocin are only going to be its deficiency, because if oxytocin increases, it's not going to be a big problem, because the functions of oxytocin are all related to childbirth. So production of milk and milk ejection is also going to be during or after childbirth, and of course the entire process of childbirth is what we saw right now being controlled by oxytocin. So at normal times, the amount of oxytocin in a woman is not going to be of a major concern. If during these conditions oxytocin is more, then it's not a huge issue, because if oxytocin is more, the uterus will contract more and the baby will come out faster. So not that big an issue. The issue that can happen is, what if oxytocin is very less or is produced in very small quantity in a woman who is undergoing parturition, about to give birth? So in that case, the uterus is not contracting strongly, so the baby is not being pushed out. So now what to do? What I told you at the very beginning, that there is a artificially prepared chemical which is exactly like oxytocin, which is prepared in the laboratory, which is called Pitocin. So that is what is injected in this woman who is undergoing delivery or parturition. And once that is injected into her, of course the contractions of the uterus will become stronger and you will be able to push the baby out. So that is where Pitocin, the artificial form of oxytocin, is used. So with this, dear students, we finally finish off oxytocin, and that finishes off hormones of the neurohypophyses, and with that we finally finish off hormones of the pituitary gland. So we have finished off the pituitary gland, we have finished off the hypothalamus, we have finished off the adrenal gland. In the next lecture, we will be starting with a new endocrine gland. So thank you, dear students. I hope you have understood everything that we have done today. Thank you. God bless. Work hard. Be nice.